Joining me live is Shadow Veterans Affairs Minister Barnaby Joyce. Barnaby Joyce, let's start with this negative gearing issue then. What do you think is going on? Because it does appear Treasurer Jim Chalmers called for this advice and someone leaked it. Then the PM was forced to hose it down.
Well, I must say, Andrew, after 20 years, I'm a bit of a cynic in this. I did get a sense that Treasurer Jim had basically loaded up a poo sandwich and then disappeared to China behind 3 Chinese aircraft carriers and saw how the Prime Minister performed. But of course, that's not it. Then we heard the story that they didn't know who modelled it. It was like someone else started modelling, selling Melbourne to Moldova. I don't know who. It just happened. They're free spirits down there at the Treasury, and they do this sort of stuff. Just wake up in the morning and come up with crazy ideas and go out to work, and taxpayer pays for it. Well, of course they're modelling it, and they're modelling it because they envisage, at least they had the thought of changing it. You wouldn't model something if you had no sense whatsoever or no wish at all to change it. And then when we ask the questions, we get these weasel answers. It's not our plan. It's not our plan. Well, yeah, it's not your plan now, but you can change your plan. What you should be saying, Treasurer Jim, Prime Minister Anthony, is we are not going to change negative gearing. And Andrew, you good people of the Fourth Estate, that is an answer you can't get out of their chops because they are thinking about it. And this is a big issue for the plumbers, the policemen, the registered nurses, the 2.4 million, I think, people who avail themselves of negative gearing. It's hardly the top end of town sort of thing. They're more interested in foreign trusts and things such as that.
Well, that's true. But, I mean, why? Let me ask this, because one of the suggestions was that that it would be grandfathered and people would still be able to have one negatively geared property. Why should Australians be able to negatively gear more than one property?
Well, the issue is there's 2 reasons. First of all, that is something that they're planned for. It's something that's a part of the Tax Act. It gives them the capacity to invest back in our nation the most formative way, in a way that actually creates housing, just like farmers create food for you to eat and fibre for you to wear. It's a very noble occupation. Making sure that there's a housing stock for people to live in is also not a bad outcome. The next thing, of course, Andrew, is that if we remove it, were these houses just going to disappear, are they? Or are they going to start falling out of the sky magically? Well, neither of those things are going to happen. You're going to have a group of houses that are just sold to somebody else. And with the changes in investment rules to encourage foreign corporations into the housing market, you'd say that the rhyme and reason of the Labor Party policy now would be that foreign corporations would come in and own the houses. I mean, the issue of the housing...
What about first homeowners?
Supply and demand.
What about first homeowners?
First homeowners are not going to be really availed by a whole heap of corporations. Instead of them bidding against another person, a policeman or a nurse, they're going to be bidding against the ABC Corporation of Shanghai or of New York. I'd give them more chance against the registered nurse, quite frankly. I think
all right.
That would be a better opportunity for them.
Let me move to the Middle East. Penny Wong's calling for an immediate ceasefire. The US President's calling for an immediate ceasefire. What's your view?
Well, my view is that Hezbollah is in breach of United Nations Declaration 1701. They're not supposed to be occupying southern Lebanon. They're certainly not supposed to be firing rockets in. My observation is that this correlates precisely to Hamas's invasion of Israel in October the 8th. What we are noting is that there are actually supposed to be peacekeepers in southern Lebanon. They were supposed to be keeping the peace. That's not been happening. Israel has the right to defend itself. Israel is a democracy. Israel has Islamic members of parliament, has Arab members of parliament. Hezbollah's goal, its reason to exist, its MO, is to remove Israel from the map. Same with Hamas, to remove it from the map. And if we had someone next door to us who wanted to remove Australia from the map and invaded us, I imagine the Australian people would say, I want this issue dealt with completely and completely put it to an end so that we can live peacefully. I don't believe that Israel wants to own Lebanon. And I think that Israelis, like most people in Beirut, just want peace. But you can't get peace if you've got a terrorist organisation that takes it as their main issue to remove the country to the south from the map. And so what you're seeing is what you get. Now, Nasrallah is, we believe, or has been confirmed that he's dead. maybe with new leadership within Hezbollah, that we start to get some sanity and they actually talk in a constructive way about how they can bring this brutal and horrendous infliction on human life to a conclusion.
Peter Dutton seems unequivocal that Israel's totally in the right when it comes to this conflict, and you made similar noises there. The government less so. We don't often have this sort of division on foreign policy. What do you make of it?
I believe that there is a sense within the Labor government of political pressure and certain demographics that they see as pressure upon them, whether it actually eventuates as something else. I think that Peter Dutton is being unequivocal, because what you do is you just flip it over and say, if this happened to us, what would we want other countries to say about us? You know, would we want equivocation? Would we want to say, well, you know, I suppose you just have to give up a section of Australia and everything will be fine from that point forward? No, you'd say, no, I want unequivocal support, if not so much for the country, but for the principle. The principle is people have to remember Hamas is a terrorist organisation. Hezbollah is a terrorist organisation. Hamas is a terrorist organisation, invaded Israel and killed, murdered, raped men, women and children. Now that brought about a war. That's what happens when you do things like that. It brings upon a war. At the same time, Hezbollah is firing rockets.
Do you believe in a two-state? Do you believe in a two-state solution?
I think we all do. I think what we need is peace, and we need it to come to that outcome peacefully. It's the only way an outcome like that would happen. It comes to it peacefully. It's negotiated between rational, calm, and moderate people, and we don't have that at the moment. We don't have that in terrorist organisations. But I'm sure, when that opportunity arises, just like with the fall of the Berlin Wall, we will hopefully get peace. That's what everybody wants. That's unequivocal across all parties. We want peace. We want to see this carnage stop.
All right. Let's talk about electric vehicles in China. The Energy Minister, Chris Bowen, said last week he wouldn't put in place the same sort of ban on Chinese-made electrical vehicles as the US is. The US are obviously concerned the cars could be controlled in a war situation. It really sounds like something from a Hollywood movie. What do you make of the government's initial reaction to this?
Well, Chris Bowen, if there was a book written about catastrophic policies and the ministers that preside over them, Chris Bowen would be on the cover, wouldn't he? I mean, everything this gentleman's touched has been a complete and utter debacle, and his most recent one is the intermittent power, euphemistically called renewables. They're actually swindle factories. What they're doing to the price of power, what they're doing to our countryside, what they're doing to the seascape, a complete fiasco. And now he's boldly stated that he knows more about issues pertinent to electric vehicles than the United States of America does, which I think is right up there with his holding the GenCos and AEMO reports. Even China talks about taking their electric vehicles out from basements and out from underneath hotels and putting them in wide open spaces. That's a pretty good recommendation. But on a more serious note, after the pager issue, the pager basically blowing up around terrorists in southern Lebanon, the penny dropped for so many people that there is a capacity remotely to create massive pain, massive hurt, maybe at the least to create complete a breakdown and chaos. And people have got to start asking the questions, like if you can update the software, if you can track these vehicles, if they're made in China, if there was a malevolent purpose behind it from a totalitarian state, what might be the consequences of that? Also, I might add, Andrew, there are 200,000 solar heaters, Chinese-made solar heaters, sitting on roofs around Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and the rest of the countryside. And we've had people who are expert in that field saying you should have a closer look at exactly what you've done there. And these are the issues. If there was, God forbid, there was ever a war, but if it was, it would start basically online and in space. And within those two things, you could create complete and utter chaos.
Just on that, can I just pick you up on that?
You want to do.
Are you suggesting we should ban Chinese-made solar heaters? Is that something that you think should occur?
I think that it's been noted within your stables, Andrew, that we have to make sure that we're a lot more diligent in oversight of exactly what is stuck on your roof. That has been in the Australian, written up. And of course, when you read it, you think, well, especially after the pager and the walkie-talkie issue with Hezbollah and what the Israelis were able to do, you think if the Israelis were able to do it, would another country with a malevolent purpose be able to do it to Australia?
And just on that, during your time in government, did you ever hear about any sort of scenario like this with the pagers or the electric vehicles in security discussions? Were experts suggesting to you this sort of thing could occur?
Well, the problem with that, Andrew, is as former Deputy Chair of the National Security Committee, I could be in line for about 15 years in jail. So if I did know that, I don't think I'd be putting it on national television.
Okay, let's move to the nuclear debate. Why can't we know about the cost of this policy now?
I think that it's on the alternative Prime Minister Peter Dutton's timing. He's a very competent and diligent person. I wouldn't think for 1 second he's playing some game that he doesn't have at. Of course they do. And let's just look at the costing of the intermittent power sector, the swindle factories. We had the Arana West, the $650 million. That's turned into $5.4 billion. We had the Burdekin scheme, which was going to be, I think, $12 billion. We have Snowy Hydro 2.0, and I know our sticky fingers are on that one as well. I acknowledge that. But that started at $2 billion, and now it's looking like heading to $20 billion. And the AEMO report, or the Gen Cost report, talks about the cost not to the end user, it talks about the cost to the investor. And the Gen Cost report, not the 2023 simulation report, does not take into account firming or battery backup, pump hydro, transmission lines, which the taxpayer is going to spend, build another 28,000, you can't make this shit up, 28,000 kilometres of it. And of course, that's going to end up in your power bill. So, and the other reports throughout the world say that intermittent power is the dearest, yet Australia is trying to run itself on windmills. I mean, it's just insane.
All right, but you're talking about You're talking about 7 federal government-owned power plants, never really been done before. And what of AGL, who has a couple of these sites?
Yeah, hang on.
Suggesting last week.
Yes, it has been done.
What are you going to tell me, Snowy Hydro? Or?
So yes, it has. Yes, it has been done before. Snowy Hydro was done under powers, under Commonwealth powers, under heads of government constitutional powers. And remember, the state governments initially owned all the coal-fired power stations.
Yes, that's true, but that's state, not federal. That's my point. Let me move on. Let me move on, though. AGL, yes. They want to develop renewable energy on their 2 sites instead. They don't want nuclear power. So isn't that a bit of a spoke in the wheel?
No, not really. And you that's one thing I have done in the past and I can talk about, is remember dealing with people such as Andrew Vesey from AGL. These are ruthless organisations that would be quite happy cornering a monopoly section of the market so that you can only buy their product at their price. And their product is intermittent power, and you'll buy it at their price. If I was back as an accountant, Andrew, as a cost accountant, I'd be all for that. Here, let's create a monopoly. That's what we always try to do as accountants, because that's how we make a bucket load of money out of you. Now, I believe that one of the big mistakes the coalition at a state level made in the past was the sale in New South Wales of their power infrastructure. I make no qualms about that. We are now looking after Eraring, I think $250 million. They sold it for 50. So you can see where this debacle ends up. And if someone said that they believe that Australia can run on intermittent power, 82% by 2030 or some other lunacy, well, just find me the other country, an effective manufacturing country, an effective Western country that does it. And of course they don't, because you can't.
I'm nearly out of time here. I just want to ask a couple more questions. Your leader flagged a possible beer excise reduction policy, and the Liberals then said it wasn't coalition policy. Is there a bit of tension here? What do you think about reducing beer tax?
Well, I think that as you go towards budget, that you should be investigating all proposals. I concur with David that if you keep on putting up the excise on beer, that's not helping anybody. It's just like what we did with cigarettes. You put up the excise, you just create a black market for cigarettes. We've successfully done that, and that doesn't help Treasury. It doesn't help the kids who buy them. It doesn't help them being in touch with drug dealers. I'm not suggesting that's what's going to happen with beer and spirits, but There has to be a limit somewhere where you say, if you believe in hotels, if you believe in people's capacity to recreate in a park or to buy a slab of beer and go watch the football, watch the grand final as they did yesterday, and watch the poor old Swans get smashed, then you've got to have it at a price they can afford it. You just can't. You can't say drinking's bad, and then want people to drink to make money for the treasurer.
All right.
Let's get closer. Let's get closer to an election and go through it.
What do you think of the job that David Littleproud's doing at the moment?
I think that David and the Nationals are doing a very, very good job. And I look at the role that David's doing, and I look at what we're doing, and also expanding that. If we look at the role of Senator Jacinta Napier-Price and The Voice, incredible. It's changed Australia. The work that David Gillespie's done in nuclear and in being the brains trust behind that, incredible. In the past, people such as Lou O'Brien had a little bit to do with myself, bringing forward the Royal Commission into supporting that into veteran suicide, incredible. In the past, dams, sealing the third road across Australia. These are incredible. Even country of origin labelling, where you pick up a good at a supermarket and there it is, how much of it comes from Australia. Absolutely incredible. And the Nationals will continue to do that. They'll do it long after I'm gone, long after David's gone, and for the betterment of Australia. And that's what I hope. This has worked so well for our nation, having a coalition, and it's incredibly important that we continue on that. And one of the greatest flaws and one of the biggest reasons the Labor Party are going to struggle so badly at the next election is they don't have a proper regional caucus, regional voice. And if they did, they wouldn't be going on this sort of massive jolly about intermittent power. They would actually be building dams in regional Australia. They would actually be fixing up the roads in a substantive way in regional Australia, and they're doing none of that.
Barnaby Joyce, thanks so much for your time.
Always a pleasure.